and no other president's going to do this, what I'm doing. And I'll tell you what, it's an honor to do it because we have been just destroyed, what they've done to our system. You know, we have $36 trillion of debt for a reason. And the reason is that people allowed it to get that way. So we'll be talking to China. We'll be talking to a lot of different countries. And I think, you know, if we can make a really fair deal and a good deal for the United States, not a good deal for others. This is America first. It's now America first. And we didn't put America first. We put America last. The people that were in the Oval Office put America last, and we're not going to stand for it.
Bring in Robert Wolf, former economic advisor to President Obama, and Steve Moore, former Trump economic advisor. Welcome to both of you. You know, people are just trying to wrap their minds around this. You know, Robert, I know what you're going to say. You're going to say that you were always for targeted tariffs. Your point has been that the broad sweeping tariffs aren't going to work. So based on what we've seen so far, and the White House saying that 50 countries have approached them to negotiate, where do you see this all going next?
Well, let me start. I would say then negotiate. Number two, I would say Peter Navarro's 100% wrong. Tariffs are taxes. It's not a tax cut. And Steve Moore of Heritage and Freedom Works will tell you that. I think businesses are caught completely offside. In 2018, 2019, we were supportive of the United States-Mexico-Canadian agreement, and all of a sudden companies got ready for that. They supported the tough stance that President Trump took on China, so they moved a lot of their factories to manufacturing in Vietnam, and then you had the Vietnam tariff. As I said, Liberation Day, it was poor policy because it was not communicated well. The data didn't actually align if you look at AEI. And what's happened since then, and I'll make it quick so Steve can talk. You've had Larry Fink, the largest money manager in the world, tell you that CEOs are telling him we're in a recession. You have Jamie Dimon, who was somewhat pretty positive, shift pretty dramatically in the last 72 hours to, I would say, somewhat negative inflation and slower growth. And we can talk about the volatility of the stock market. The VIX, which is the fair gauge, is the highest in 4 years.
Okay, well, you know what that means. There could easily be some contrarians that step in here when that VIX gets too high, and it has gotten high. That is for sure. To your point about Jamie Dimon, he is warning about the effects this will have on inflation. And there are concerns out there about this. This is what he said to shareholders. The recent tariffs will likely increase inflation, causing many to consider a great probability of a recession. And even with the recent decline in market values, prices remain relatively high. These significant and somewhat unprecedented forces cause us to remain very cautious. He says he's very cautious. I mean, as is anybody. With this level of uncertainty, you're cautious, but that doesn't mean that things won't work out. But case in point, those who want to support these tariffs, like the beef industry, we're about to have a cattle rancher on, fifth generation, who's saying all this, Australia is selling billions of dollars of beef here in the United States, and they won't buy $1 of U.S. beef. Those are the folks who want to level the playing field. But can we weather this storm to get there, Steve?
Well, I'm looking at the board right now, Sandra, and I've seen something I haven't seen in a week or so, and that is some green. I think there's a little green down there on the S&P and the NASDAQ. And by the way, those opened up way down in the morning. Now, the Dow Jones is still in the red a little bit, but that's a relief. I mean, remember, a lot of people were predicting a 2,000-point decline this morning. So I'm happy to see that it's climbing in the right direction. I'm not a big tariff guy, as you know. I think Trump is a master negotiator. I think what has to happen next, if we recover the losses, and I've lost a lot of money over the last week or so. I don't know about you and Robert, but these foreign leaders have to give Donald Trump a phone call. Sandra, it's very simple. And they have to say, look, we're ready to sit down at the bargaining table. We're ready to bring our tariffs down. That's the right thing for them to do, Sandra. Their tariffs are 2, 3, 4 times higher than ours are. I think Trump is ready to negotiate. And at the end of the day, if he can win, and look, Robert, I understand what Robert's saying. This is a very risky strategy, but I think it'll work out. And if it does, I really believe in the end of the day, we could have freer and fairer trade that will benefit everyone. But I'm sick and tired of these foreign leaders saying, oh, how dare Donald Trump start a trade war when these countries have tariffs that are multiple times higher than ours are, Sandra.
Okay, so this is Kevin Hassett, who obviously is right inside of the team that is, orchestrating these tariffs, the architect of them, and he explained what is happening right now like this earlier on Fox.
It's these countries that are sending inelastic supply to the country, and so they're going to bear the brunt of the tariffs. And if that were false, then if they didn't bear the brunt, then they'd be quiet about it, right? The fact that they're all angry and upset and sending retaliation our way, it suggests that President Trump is right, that they bear the tariffs. If they're worried about bearing the tariff, that would explain their behavior. It's not the American consumer.
Okay, Robert.
Well, I'm a supporter of Kevin Hassett often, but more in 2019 when he resigned from the Trump administration and said trade wars are bad and tariffs are bad for the economy. So it's a real 180. I mean, listen, there is no one in the GOP, Heritage, AEI, that is raising their hands and said, I applaud tariff and I want trade wars. But equally, no one's saying whether it's on meat or shrimp or auto, where we're being taken advantage of, go hard at them. Go hard listen, I was supportive of President Obama when he did tires, supportive of President Trump when he did steel, never supportive of across the board. We shouldn't be putting a tariff on Brazil coffee. We're a coffee drinker, import country. Doesn't make sense.
I mean, Steve, you can make the case that costs look like they're going down right now. I mean, these markets are tough to keep track of, but I mean, we're watching the stock market, but we're obviously watching oil, energy prices as well. And President Trump made this point that, it is bringing these prices down. I'm looking at oil off more than $1 right now. It dropped below $60 in overnight trading. What do you make of that? And what does that mean for the American consumer?
I'm worried that a little bit of that decline in the price of oil is because they think the demand is going to be down, because this could have a real shock to the real economy. But I just want to make one other quick point. I don't like this line that somehow there's a kind of Wall Street versus Main Street in America. 160 million Americans own stock. 64% of households do. So I don't like this idea that everybody owns stock in this country. Everybody wants a good economy or businesses to succeed. And so we're all in this together. I don't like the division that's being talked about.
Robert, you want final word here?
I applaud Steve for that. I'm with him. I think everyone's a capitalist, and we want this economy to do well, and we want the president to do well. This is not. That's right. This, me, I'm not one of these, Trump deranged syndrome. I applaud when I support her policy, and I say when I don't.
Okay. All right. So we know that we're going to hear from the president here any moment now. He's expected to take questions with the Israeli prime minister in the Oval Office. I can't imagine any of this is going to come up. No, joking. Likely it will. We'll be watching it. All right.
Let's see if we can figure out the plan with Fox Business anchor David Asman. David, great to see you here today. I'm glad you're with us. That seems to be what Wall Street's trying to figure out as well. Everybody's trying to figure out what is the plan from Donald Trump.
Well, and he actually said a little bit about what his plan was. He said we have people coming to us that we never thought were going to be coming to us with these trade deals now. He said we didn't even think of coming up with some of the things they're offering to us because we thought they'd be too juicy. He didn't use the word juicy, but that's essentially what he made. The other thing that a lot of investors are looking at as juicy is the stock market right now. There's something, by the way, there's a panic index. A lot of people don't know about it. It's called the VIX, the VIX. It's a volatility index. It pops up when investors panic. And I think we have a chart going back 35 years. There have been 2 other times besides today. You see on the very far right, that's today, and that's a pretty high panic index. It went up, it touched on 60 today, and then it below 60. But the other 2 times you see there, the one to the left in the middle there, that's the pandemic. That's the March of 2020. And then you go to the left there, and that's the financial crisis of 2009. Coincidentally, also in March was the worst moment of that. I actually had a lot of luck in investing in those 2 spikes that happened, one in 2009 and the other in 2020, because I saw that the market, the panic was to the point where it was going to start to get better. So I bought in at those times, and I tell you, I haven't done it yet, but I'm thinking of buying in right now because, again, this 2009, 2020, and today, are points at which the panic seemed to be at the peak. So I'm thinking of getting in, but I also want to talk about tariffs. I know you want to go there too. Go ahead.
And a little bit of time we have together. By the way, Warren Buffett once said, be greedy when others are fearful, be fearful when others are greedy, to your point on when to invest. And nobody's invested better over time than Warren Buffett. We have limited time. Let's go big picture. Let's go small. Big picture on the tariffs. I want to talk about that like you said. The administration keeps saying, hey, it's not just about reciprocal tariffs. It's about currency manipulation. It's about value-added taxes. It's about a lot that we want from these other countries. So Vietnam, if you come and say, hey, we'll drop it to zero, still not good enough, David.
Well, that's because they put in this formula. Peter Navarro and the other trade guys have put in a formula that goes beyond tariffs. It goes to non-trade barriers, but it also goes to the deficit. Now, of course, a country like Vietnam is going to have a trade deficit with the United States. They make about $10 a day there. They can't afford the goods that they send, that we would send to them. So obviously they have, I think that trade deficit as part of the equation is a mistake. That's my feeling. I love reciprocal. It's very simple. You give us a tariff, we'll give you a tariff of the same amount. That's simple. But here's the problem. We Americans used to live a lot better with a lot less than they do now. My dad made $3,500 a year the year I was born. That's an equivalent of about $40,000 a year now. With that $40,000, the equivalent of $40,000 a year, he had a 3-bedroom house. He had 2 kids. He had a wife who didn't work. He had a car, a TV, and my granddad lived in the basement. All right, that was with the equivalent of $40,000 a year. You try getting anywhere near of having all that stuff with $40,000, and it won't happen anywhere in the United States right now. You could double it. You could triple it. With $150,000, it'd be tough to have everything. We have lost the value that used to make the American dream real for American families, and Donald Trump wants to get it back, and he sees trade as a way of doing that.
And we're going to talk about that big picture, the deeper dive a little bit later with several guests on what it means for the middle class in America. Real quickly, David, on the way out, I don't want to ignore there are people that watch us, perhaps senior citizens, those concerned about their 401ks, and those that may need access to their money in a short period of time. What would you tell those viewers today?
If you need access, just take a piece of it, and have it come from one of your not necessarily your stocks, but the bonds that you have. Maybe you could take it out of your bonds loan. Don't take it out of a 401k because you're going to pay a huge penalty on it. But the bottom line is, if you can stay still, do so. This is not a time. Panic is the worst time to make trading deals, to get rid of what you have because you think it's going to go down further. It is the time, though, to start thinking about buying in, particularly, as I said in the beginning, because now is one of those times when there are a lot more people panicking, and people like Warren Buffett, who you just mentioned, have a lot of cash right now because they want to get in when everybody else is selling.
All right, David, it's always fascinating. Thank you for making sense of it for us today on the day. When everyone else loses their mind, we try to keep ours right here. Thank you, David. Now, what is the big picture goal here? Is this it? Is it to bring others to the table and to find a fairer trade on the world stage? Here to discuss is Batya Ungar-Sargon, journalist and author of Second Class and How the Elites Betrayed America's Working Men and Women, and Matt Goodwin, British commentator and author. Thank you both for being with us. Batya, last week we played Sound of You on Piers Morgan. Incredibly passionate, incredibly eloquent on what you think is the promise here from Donald Trump. You don't think it's just about bringing people to the negotiating table. You think it's about addressing the income inequalities and the loss of America's middle class.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Will, and for everything that you do on your show. You know, back in the 1970s, the largest share of the wealth in this country was held by the middle class. That is how you have a stable democracy. That is how you have prosperity for all. That is the idea that this country was founded on, that if you work hard, you should have access to the American dream. And that was inextricably linked to the fact that 25% of the economy was in manufacturing. It was the largest share of the economy. Manufacturing pays good jobs, good wages, good conditions, where people who work really hard can expect to own a home and retire in dignity. And what happened between then and now was that our economy became an upward funnel of wealth into the pockets of the elites. Today, the largest share of the economy is in finance and real estate. And that middle class has been totally squeezed to where working class Americans, the hardest working Americans, can no longer expect to be able to afford the American dream despite working so hard. And what Donald Trump is doing is he went out there, and on behalf of those destroyed working class communities, he has taken on the entire international global order. He is waging war on behalf of the forgotten men and women of the heartland of this country and saying no longer will they be downwardly mobile and committing suicide and dying of fentanyl overdoses because they've been left out of the immense prosperity that this country has generated. That's the whole story right there.
It is a story, as you point out, about the American middle class, but it's playing out on a world stage. And so, Matt, I want to go to you from the view across the pond. By the way, the UK Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, is proclaiming this the end of globalization. The world has changed, globalization is over, and we are now in a new era. The view across the Atlantic.
Well, you've absolutely hit the nail on the head there. Even our own Prime Minister from the Labour Party, of course, this is the same Labour Party which under Tony Blair ushered in this hyper globalist regime that basically smashed the working class in Western societies. Even the Prime Minister of the Labour Party is now conceding that that era of globalization is over. And I think what's so interesting today is many of the people who are up in arms about what President Trump is currently doing are the very same people often who told us throughout the 1990s and the early 2000s that that earlier economic regime would lift all boats in the West, that everybody would win. There would be an abundance of jobs and wages. And actually what we now know, as indeed Vice President Vance has already pointed out, 90,000 factories got shuttered across the US since the 1990s. England's northern industrial heartlands were completely blown apart, partly through unfair competition from China, a rigged economic system. The same story in parts of France and elsewhere in Europe. So what I call hyper-globalization really didn't work for workers in the West on any level.
Now, this is the part of the conversation where I want to explore what might have in the past been a difference between us. There was a rising tide that lifted all boats in the sense that the definition of poverty has changed over time. What it means to be poor is not the same today as what it meant to be poor 30, 40 years ago, 50 years ago. But there is no doubt, Batya, you're right about income inequality. And it's weird to say this because you're a former Democrat, and that's a thing that you would have said consistently. Now, Democrats might have argued for wealth redistribution because of that inequality. But here we are on the side of the right, now paying attention to what you said, which I think is an accurate diagnosis, Batya. I absolutely agree with your diagnosis. And the problem, as I see it, is when you have that type of inequality, you're looking at a society, an empire, that is beginning its own collapse.
I could not agree with you more. I mean, in the olden days, the rich knew that they had to have a sense of noblesse oblige, like we better build, you know, a hospital or something, or the peasants are going to revolt, right? You know, there's none of that in the elites today who think that because they have a fancy degree that they, you know, are the reason that they are so successful. Here's the difference between what I think the MAGA GOP version of this should be and the left in America. The left in America today thinks that you solve this income inequality with redistribution, right? So they created this economy in which if you're not in the knowledge industry, forget it. You're going to be poor, but they're happy to pay higher taxes and then take that money and buy you public housing or give you food stamps. The only problem with that, Will, is that working class people don't want to live at the beneficence of rich liberals. They want autonomy, they want freedom, and they work really hard for it. And here's where Trump's genius comes into it. Trump did this very pro-working class stuff. He controlled the border, limited the supply of labor, which immediately translates into higher wages for the working class. And he imposed these tariffs, which are going to elevate the product of the American working class. But he combined that with immense goodies for the business community that are coming down the pike. Deregulation, drill baby drill, tax cuts, taxes of 15% corporate taxes if you reshore manufacturing. That combination is the winning ticket that will really lift all boats. And I don't know that I can point to an example where that's been tried before.
Matt, I'm sorry, I'm out of time. I would like to talk to you about what happened to the British Empire and how it's a warning sign for us here. And if we can recover the decline of the American empire here, if this is a moment in history where that can be done. But I do think we should look at the British Empire as a warning over what's happened over the last 50 to 100 years. I appreciate your time, both of you, Matt and Batya, today.
God bless, Will. Thank you.
Don't be a panican. President Trump coining a new phrase as he sticks to his guns on tariffs, telling Wall Street and regular folks to be strong, courageous, and patient as their 401ks took a roller coaster in the stock market. The president promising if you are patient, greatness will be the result. At the same time, President Trump also says that he could be ready to talk and cut deals with over 180 nations that he tariffed, meeting earlier with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu for his first meeting with a world leader since the tariffs launched.
It can both be true. There can be permanent tariffs, and there can also be negotiations, because there are things that we need beyond tariffs. We're going to get fair deals and good deals with every country, and if we don't, we're going to have nothing to do with them. They're not going to be allowed to participate in the United States. It's the only chance our country will have to reset the table, because no other president would be willing to do what I'm doing or to even go through it. Now, I don't mind going through it because I see a beautiful picture at the end. Tariffs will make this country very rich.
Team Trump working overtime to tame the tariff beast, with administration officials saying over 50 countries have reached out to make deals.
More than 50 countries have reached out to the president to begin a negotiation.
There doesn't have to be a recession.
Army of millions and millions of human beings screwing in little screws to make iPhones. That kind of thing is going to come to America. It's going to be automated, and great Americans, the trade craft of America, is going to fix them, is going to work on them.
Meanwhile, the Democrats busy trying to score some political points, criticizing the president for playing golf as tariffs rocked the stock market.
Where was Trump when those soldiers were transferred to Dover Air Force Base? Trump was at his resort in Miami, Florida. He was there to hit the links for the Saudi-backed Live golf tournament.
Is the president out on a golf cart while people's retirement is in flames?
He spent the day working on his golf swing.
They're experiencing uncertainty, right? And they see the president off golfing.
Jesse, one of the things I cannot stand is complaints about golf.
Me too. And that's not a middle finger to middle America. That's a middle finger to all these foreign countries who are trying to get on the phone and negotiate these tariffs down. But if Biden was golfing during a stock market like this, I'm sure I wouldn't say a word.
You wouldn't.
I would not. And now I'm not panicking, Dana, because I'm not looking.
Okay.
I haven't looked at my bank account. I'm afraid. But I'm just going to be patient. And my people are going to set me up so when this thing rallies, I can say, in your face, Harold, and it will rally, because it always does. Now, Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, broke the Bank of England. That's who I want running this. He'll probably break the Bank of China. And that's what we're trying to do here. This is a 40-year problem, and we've only been at it for 4 days. Take a breath. What Lutnick is saying, American workers are not going to be screwing in little screws to iPhones. He's saying the future is robotics. He's saying the future is AI, automation, and robotics. So you're going to have this massive high-tech manufacturing sector that's going to be building cars, airplanes, data centers, and you're going to need American blue-collar workers to service these robots, build the robots, and maintain them and operate them. If we're going to have ships, if we're going to have new weapons for the next century, that's the game. And if you're saying they're going to pass this tariff onto the customer and they're going to raise prices, okay, maybe. Or we just got 6 million new customers all over the world. So we're going to be making so much money selling these things to India and Asia and Europe that we're not going to have to raise prices. Now, everybody says, oh, you know, we got these flat screen TVs. Got to have our cheap flat screen TVs. Okay. Does the guy really need $50 off a flat screen when his factory left, when he doesn't have a job and fentanyl's pouring into the country? That's the trade-off we're talking about here. Now, here's how I feel about this. Remember in 2022, when they had 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth? And that's technically a recession, and the S&P was down 20% for the year. Did anybody panic? Were there any panicans? No, they said Bidenomics was working. I don't know if it was or not.
Well, obviously not.
We have, right, and that's the point, because now we have growth in the economy. We have S&P that's only down 14%, massive amounts of private investments pouring in, and we had a massive jobs number to hit in March. So everybody stop panicking. Relax.
All right. I feel like, Harold, you got a lot of notes. I'm going to go to you next, and we'll give you the floor.
Wait, first, good to be back.
It's glad to be back, and good to be back around the table, and hope everybody had a good weekend. I'd say two things to Jesse. I hope you're right. Two, thus far you don't appear to be right. And I say that for just a couple of objective reasons. First, President Trump and I agree on probably a lot of things. One thing we agreed on over the last 7-8 years is that every day you get a scorecard about how our economy and how consumers and business leaders feel, business people of all sizes, big and small businesses, how they feel about the day, how they feel about what happened that day. And we generally look to our equity markets to get some sense of that. We've lost $7 trillion in 3 trading days. It was down as much as $10 trillion, up a little bit today as I was on with Dana in the morning, and then on the show this morning, and then down as the day went on. Two, we have economists at some of the biggest financial institutions in the country have now raised their recession risk, or she said the risk that the country will be plunged into a recession. And they all think it's because it's a self-inflicted wound. Now let's think about the positive things the president wants to do with what he's doing here. He wants to bring two things, I think, and sometimes it's unclear what the destination is. He sometimes says he wants 0 tariffs from all these countries. I saw Mr. Navarro on this morning saying, even if we get 0 tariffs, there are other things we want from the countries as well. It's odd to hear that because some of these countries we talk about selling things to, Jesse, they're very small countries. We've suggested that we want to sell more beef to Honduras. Honduras has a $75 billion GDP. If they spent all of their GDP on us, it wouldn't make a dent in what we're doing. Don't get me wrong, I love $75 billion, but when you've lost $7 trillion, it seems to me to be a weird trade-off. I'm not that great at math, but that's not a winning.
I think they want to sell it to Australia more than Honduras.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's big, beautiful beef, Harold.
Yes.
Let's get it right.
So if you want to go there, I'm happy to go there. The reason they don't take our beef and pork, you know what? They don't like the fact that there are hormones in them.
Yeah, that's an excuse. They do it to Europe too.
Okay. Well, these are excuses that have been going on for years. 3, throughout our history as a nation, the first 100 years of the United States, we ran a trade deficit. You know why? Because we were a growing nation. We were a rapidly growing economy. Economies that are growing run trade deficits, not because they don't make things, but because they're consuming so much of the world's resources. The one time in our nation's history where we did not run a deficit was during the Great Depression. Why? Because we weren't a rapidly growing economy at the time. This is just math. Now let's get to the facts. The president wants to produce more things in America. He wants to reduce the trade deficits with countries, and he wants America to be the place that where everything is done. In order to do that, you have to build factories, you have to train workers, and you have to ensure that you have fiscal responsibility. The trade tariffs the president's talking about is a small part of it. He has made it the only part of it. Where I said last week that I hope and pray that he knows what he's talking about, thus far, he doesn't seem to know what he's talking about. If this takes 6 months to a year, and we find see the kind of continued stress in our economy and our markets, Jesse, it won't be about whether you're panicking or I'm panicking. It'll be all of our viewers will be panicking because they will see not only that their retirement numbers should their retirement accounts have come down, you'll find young people not being able to find jobs or good paying jobs. You'll see houses not being sold. You'll see grocery prices being too high and people not being able to spend at small businesses. So Judge, it may be funny, but the reality so far is the numbers don't. If this were a Democrat in office, I say to everyone around this table and people watching who I love the fact that they watch, if this were a Democrat doing this, we would have a very, very different take on this, and I would be leading that charge. Thus far, this isn't working. I want to give it all the time in the world, but at some point, when it gets to 10 trillion we've lost in the market, and we're trying to make up a few billion in tariffs, someone has to say to the president, this isn't the way to do it, Mr. President.
And I don't think the judge was laughing. She was just going to jump in with a point.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean I wasn't trying to be critical.
First of all, Harold, no one thinks this is funny. This is very serious.
I wasn't trying to say that, Judge. I wasn't trying to say that at all.
You did say it, but let's be real clear about something, and that is that President Trump is doing what presidents have refused to do for the last 40 or 50 years, okay? Donald Trump is fighting for the middleman in this country. He is fighting to make sure that this country has the ability ability to survive in terms of if there is another catastrophe like COVID, where we don't have to rely on other countries for medication. We don't have to worry about the supply chain. We are in a position where we can take care of ourselves, and our strength is maintained within the United States. Now, all he is doing is demanding that there is fair trade for Americans. I don't want to hear that 89 or $29 billion of beef comes from Australia to the United States, and we don't even sell a hamburger to Australia. I don't want to hear that 94% of the shrimp comes from Southeast Asia and Ecuador that doesn't have anywhere near the protections of their food, and then none of our shrimp is going anywhere else. I don't want to hear that American businesses are being blocked by other countries that get the benefit of blocking us and getting our money. So what we need right now is a president who has the strength, the stamina, taking the fight to other countries. We sell 0 cars to Japan. You look out on this street, you've got Mitsubishis, Hondas, Mazdas, Nissan, Subarus. We don't sell cars in the EU. I don't know the last time I saw a Cadillac in the EU, but they've got Mercedes over here and BMWs over here and Volkswagens over here. I'm tired of the inequity, and so is he. And this is about making sure that we get treated fairly. And this idea, how dare he start a trade war? He didn't start the war. They did. And it's time we protected American industry. It's time we protected Americans' assets. And the consequence in the end is that we will have food that will be safer, it will be American, and we will have industry in this country. And by the way, they're coming to the table. They're willing to go 0 for 0. The EU is. Right now, Israel is dropping tariffs. Right now, he's saying to China, and my money is on President Trump, who got rid of the caliphate that everybody bit their nails about, every Democrat for years. He got rid of the caliphate in 6 weeks, but they said it couldn't be done. He's saying by the 9th, 50% increase. And you know what? The Americans voted for substantial change, and Donald Trump is giving it to them.
It's called The Patience of Greg.
Yes.
Sitting there quietly thinking, writing notes. What do you want to say?
Well, it is a different time than the Depression, Harold. And what's the difference? Cheap labor abroad. Just 1 or 2 iterations from slave labor, but we don't see it, so we don't care. We can watch an NBA basketball player talk about the inequalities in our country while he pushes for shoes made by kids in China. We can't even sell these goods at pawn shops. They're so bad. Have you heard that story?
No.
The crap it's so crappy. They're like, this isn't even American made anymore. Yeah, it is down 3 days. That's a half opinion. Give it time. You elected this guy based on the fact that he's working for you, so why don't you give him the time to work? People who panic at the first sign of uncertainty, they're freaking out at the hard part. But everything in life that is worth doing always has a hard part. Doesn't matter when, that's the mantra for life. Short-term pain up front almost guarantees long-term benefit and calm after all. But it's easy to be brave during the easy part. It's better to be brave during the hard part. Let's say there's a donut right here, Jesse, a tasty donut, and I want to eat it. Short-term reward, I eat it, and then what do I feel? You'll hear me for the rest of the day. I will hate it. I will go like, why did I eat that donut? But if I don't eat that donut, that means I don't get that short-term pleasure. It's short-term pain, but long-term, I'm slimmer, I'm beautiful. I'm the envy of Harold. So this idea of delayed gratification, short-term pain underlies every single thing you do in life. Exercise, food, relationships, work, and yes, even trade. It's going to hurt a little bit, but it wasn't like Donald Trump didn't tell us that was going to happen. He said it'll get a little bumpy. He's the pilot telling you when we take off, it's going to be a little bumpy. You hate it when your friend screams during that part, so don't scream. Tariffs are...
That's so true.
Tariffs are offering that choice. You continue on this path of asymmetrical economic relationships, you're going to get cheap goods. But where are we in a decade? Or even sooner, fewer jobs, fewer manufacturing plants, more dependent on countries who embrace the immorality of slave wages that we wouldn't do here. So the tariff is short-term pain, stock market panic, for long-term reward. And when you see a lot of these people panicking, remember that 10 10% owned 88% of the stock market. Do you think they're panicking? No, they're buying. They're buying. Because I wish I bought during the pandemic, but I keep my money in a sack.
We didn't know what we were doing.
Yeah, we don't know what we were doing.
You can buy now, Greg.
Yes.
That's a big sack.
Good evening. I'm Brett Baer. Breaking tonight, President Trump says virtually every country wants to negotiate with the U.S. in the wake of tariff announcements that have sent world markets reeling. He's also denying a report he's considering a 90-day pause in the tariff policy. The president making those comments during an afternoon meeting with visiting Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. It was a roller coaster today on Wall Street, closing numbers not as catastrophic as last week or, as predicted, the Dow lost 349. The S&P 500 was only off 12. The Nasdaq actually gained 15. Senior White House correspondent Jackie Heinrich starts us off tonight live from the North Lawn. Good evening, Jackie.
Good evening, Brett. The White House is chastising overreaction from both pundits and markets. NEC Director Kevin Hassett says talk of a nuclear winter is irresponsible. The Treasury Secretary revealing everyone's impatience surprised him as the president makes clear he is committed to this plan.
It's the only chance we're going to have to reset the table on trade.
President Trump is personally involved in new trade negotiations, but not in a hurry to put pen to paper.
There are 50, 60, maybe almost 70 countries now who have approached us. So it's going to be a busy April, May, maybe into June.
Doubling down on the strategy despite a false report claiming a 90-day pause was under consideration. The social media claim rallied the market by $2.4 trillion before disappearing within a half hour. The press secretary calling it fake news.
I've seen some deals that are great, and President Trump is going to decide if they're great enough. It's going to be tough to get him to decide to really come to the table and sign on the dotted line.
The president says tough but fair parameters are being set. New among his list of goals, closing trade deficits.
China has a massive surplus that they take and they spend on their military. Well, we don't want that.
Some in the president's party concerned his approach may not be sustainable, earning a nickname. The president posting, "Don't be a panickin', a new party based on weak and stupid people. Be strong, courageous, and patient, and greatness will be the result."
No other president would be willing to do what I'm doing or to even go through it. Now, I don't mind going through it because I see a beautiful picture at the end.
There are signs the White House believes leveraging Republican anxiety may also serve a legislative goal.
86% of GDP is affected by the deregulation and the tax cuts and everything else.
In the meantime, more calls for calm, even internally, after Elon Musk blasted trade advisor Peter Navarro and the tariffs in a now deleted post.
When he's in his Doge lane is great. Elon sells cars. The electronics come from Taiwan, and he's simply protecting his own interests, as any business person would do.
Now, the White House has not responded to a claim from the American Enterprise Institute that the Trump team accidentally quadrupled the tariff rates by using retail prices instead of import prices in that formula. But there are also signs that the old numbers might not matter as much as the negotiation. For instance, China got slapped with 50% tariffs after Beijing retaliated. Brett.
Jackie Heinrich, live in the North Lawn. Jackie, thanks.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.